The city breathed slowly that evening, wrapped in a pale blue dusk that softened every sharp edge. Streetlights flickered on one by one, not yet bright enough to claim the night, just glowing enough to make everything feel suspended, unfinished. Elena stood at the edge of the balcony, fingers resting lightly on the cold metal railing, watching the world below move without her. She always noticed the pauses between things. The seconds before traffic surged forward. The quiet after laughter faded. The space where something should have been said, but wasn't. Inside the apartment, voices rose and fell, warm, familiar, overlapping. 5 people she loved in different ways. 5 presences filling the room behind her. And yet, the emptiness pressed gently against her chest, like a question she had been avoiding for years. She traced a small circle on the fogged glass with her fingertip. Slow, careful, deliberate, a habit she didn't remember starting. Behind her, Noah leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her without meaning to. Or maybe meaning to far more than he admitted to himself. He had always been like this, aware of her in the quiet ways, the invisible ways that didn't demand anything from her. He noticed when her shoulders tightened. When she drifted toward windows. When her laughter sounded a half-second delayed, as if it had to travel a longer distance to reach the surface. He watched the way she drew that circle again. His chest tightened, not with jealousy, exactly, but with something heavier. Recognition. She had once told him, half laughing, half serious, that she didn't feel complete on her own. That she needed people around her. Needed pieces from different places. 5 others, she'd said, like it was a joke she'd practiced long enough to believe. Noah hadn't laughed. He still didn't. Hey, someone called her name from behind, but Elena didn't turn right away. She finished the circle first, connecting the line with quiet precision, then wiped the glass clean with the sleeve of her sweater, erasing it as if it had never been there. She stepped back inside, warmth wrapping around her immediately. Conversation resumed. Glasses clinked. Someone brushed past her shoulder, casual and unthinking. Elena smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, but her awareness narrowed, like it always did, until it found him. Noah. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Just long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. He didn't smile right away. Neither did she. The silence stretched, not awkward, not loud, just present. He felt it then. That familiar pull. The sense that everything important happened in these small, nearly invisible moments. The ones no one else noticed. Later, when the night had thinned and people began drifting away in pairs and goodbyes, Elena found herself sitting on the floor, back against the couch, knees pulled close. Noah sat a short distance away, mirroring her posture without realizing it. The room was dim now, shadows softening the corners, the air heavy with the remains of warmth and closeness. She picked up a pen from the coffee table and began to roll it between her fingers. You ever feel like you're unfinished? She asked suddenly, voice low, as if the walls were listening. Noah didn't answer right away. He watched the pen pause in her hands. Sometimes, he said carefully. But not the way you mean. She glanced at him, searching his face. How do you know how I mean? He swallowed. Because you think completion comes from adding more people. More pieces. Her lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile. Doesn't it? He shook his head, almost imperceptibly. I think some people mistake fullness for noise. The words settled between them, heavy and delicate all at once. Elena looked down, then reached for a scrap of paper on the table. Without explanation, she drew the circle again. This time slower, thicker, pressing harder, as if the shape itself needed weight to exist. This, she said softly, is what I'm chasing. Noah leaned closer before he could stop himself. Not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth of her arm. What if, he began, then stopped. The moment stretched, taut with hesitation. What if you already are that? Her breath caught, not sharply, just enough to betray her. She didn't look at him. She stared at the circle. You don't get it, she whispered. I keep filling the space. But it never stays full. His voice dropped. Because you're filling the wrong space. Silence fell again. Deeper this time. Louder. Their shoulders almost touched. Almost. Elena folded the paper carefully, as if protecting the circle inside it. I think, she said, barely audible, that something is missing in me. Noah closed his eyes for a brief second, pain and longing threading together in his chest. When he opened them, he looked at her like she was standing at the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. Or, he said, voice steady but strained, you're standing right next to it. She turned then. Finally. Their faces were close enough now that the world beyond them blurred. Her eyes searched his, slow and uncertain, as if afraid of what she might find reflected there. The moment held, unfinished, unspoken, and somewhere between them, unseen but undeniable, the circle waited, quietly demanding to be closed. The night didn't end cleanly after that. It lingered, stretching itself thin between breaths and half glances, refusing to release what had been stirred. Elena lay awake long after Noah had gone home, staring at the faint crack in the ceiling above her bed, tracing it with her eyes the same way she traced circles when her thoughts became too loud. She unfolded the paper again. The circle stared back at her, simple, imperfect, closed. Her chest tightened. She had always believed completion was something you assembled slowly, borrowing pieces from others. A laugh from one person. Comfort from another. Desire, distraction, warmth, spread across 5 different hearts so no single one could hurt her too deeply. It had felt safer that way. Controlled. Yet tonight, for the first time, the idea felt fragile. Because Noah hadn't tried to fill the space. He had simply stood beside it. The following days moved differently. Slower. Heavier. Every interaction between them seemed charged with a quiet awareness, as though both were walking carefully around something sacred and dangerous at the same time. They still joked. Still spoke easily. But beneath every word lived another sentence neither dared to say. They met at their usual cafe on Thursday afternoon, rain blurring the windows into soft streaks of gray. The place smelled like espresso and old books. Elena arrived first, choosing a table near the window. She drew a circle in the condensation on her glass without thinking, then wiped it away quickly, as if embarrassed by the habit. When Noah walked in, she felt it immediately, the subtle shift in her body, the way her shoulders eased without permission. He spotted her, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then came over. "Hey," he said. "Hey." That was all. Yet it felt like more. They sat across from each other, knees almost touching under the small table. He noticed the way her fingers fidgeted with the sleeve of her sweater, twisting the fabric, then smoothing it again. She noticed how he leaned forward when she spoke, as if afraid to miss something important. Silence settled between them, not empty, but dense. "You've been quiet," he said gently. "So have you." A pause. The rain tapped softly against the glass, steady and patient. "I keep thinking about what you said," she admitted finally. "About filling the wrong space." His jaw tightened slightly. "And," she looked down at her cup. "And I don't know what to do with it." He didn't rush her. That was always his strength, his restraint. "You don't have to do anything yet." "That's the problem," she murmured. "I feel like something is already happening." The words hung there, trembling. His knee brushed hers accidentally, or maybe not accidentally at all. Neither moved away. The contact was light, almost nothing, but it sent a quiet ripple through both of them. Later, as they walked out into the rain together, Noah held his jacket over her head without asking. Their hands touched briefly as she adjusted it, fingers lingering for half a second too long. Elena felt her breath hitch, a reaction she didn't recognize anymore, unfiltered, unguarded. At her apartment building, she stopped. "Do you ever think," she asked, voice barely louder than the rain, "that we repeat patterns because we're afraid of endings?" Noah studied her face, the way rain darkened her lashes, the vulnerability she didn't know she was showing. "I think," he said slowly, "we repeat them until something finally feels real enough to stop." Her eyes flicked to his lips. Then back to his eyes. She stepped inside the building. Didn't invite him up. Didn't say goodbye properly. Just left him standing there with the echo of something unfinished. That night, she dreamed of circles, some broken, some endless. In the center of every one stood Noah, waiting, unmoving. Days passed. Then weeks. Elena continued seeing the others. Laughing, touching, sharing pieces of herself in familiar, careful ways. Yet each time she returned home, she felt the same hollow echo, sharper now because she knew its shape. A circle with only one missing line. Noah, meanwhile, carried the weight quietly. He watched her from the edges of rooms, listened to her talk about people who gave her everything except peace. Every time she said she was fine, something in him ached, not because she belonged to someone else, but because she didn't belong to herself. They met again one evening at a small art gallery, white walls, soft lights, too much silence. Elena drifted from piece to piece until she stopped in front of a simple sketch, a hand-drawn circle, uneven and dark. Her breath caught. Noah stood beside her without speaking. "It's stupid," she whispered. "But this feels like me." He looked at the drawing, then at her. "It doesn't look empty." She shook her head. "It looks closed." Something shifted then. Subtle. Irreversible. She reached out without looking and took his hand. Not tightly. Not desperately. Just enough to acknowledge the truth of it. His fingers curled around hers instinctively, a quiet promise he hadn't meant to make. I think, she said, voice trembling, I've been afraid that if I let one person see all of me, they'll realize I'm not enough. He turned to face her fully, heart pounding. Elena. She looked up at him, eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope. What if 5 was never the answer? The question cracked something open inside him. He wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to confess the years of quiet devotion, the way she had always felt like home and ruin all at once. But fear held him still, fear of being the last piece and the one she might lose. I think, he said softly, you're closer to the truth than you think. Her thumb brushed over his knuckle. The smallest touch. The loudest moment. The circle was tightening now. And neither of them could step out of it anymore. Something changed after the gallery night, though nothing was said out loud. The world remained the same, days moved forward, conversations continued, life unfolded in its usual rhythm, but underneath it all, a low, constant hum had begun. Awareness. Proximity. The quiet knowledge that neither of them could pretend anymore. Elena felt it in the smallest moments. In the way No's messages came a little slower now, as if he were choosing each word carefully. In the way his eyes lingered on her when she laughed, not amused but attentive, like he was memorizing something fragile. In the way her own body responded to him before her mind had time to intervene, heart quickening, breath softening, defenses thinning. She started drawing circles everywhere. In the margins of notebooks. On her skin with the pad of her thumb. On steamed mirrors after showers, watching the shape appear and disappear, again and again. Each one felt like a question she was getting closer to answering. One evening, they found themselves alone together for the first time in weeks. No's apartment was quiet, the city outside muted by rain. The lights were low, casting long shadows across the walls. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap, posture careful, as if she were afraid of leaning too far into the moment. Noah stood by the window, watching the rain trace its own imperfect paths down the glass. Neither spoke. Silence stretched, thick and intimate. Not empty. Never empty. I don't know how to do this, Elena said suddenly, her voice barely more than a breath. Noah turned slowly. Do what? She swallowed. Stop running in circles. The word landed between them like a held breath. She stood, pacing once, then stopping directly in front of him. Close enough now that she could feel his warmth, steady and grounding. Every time I think I'm getting close to something real, I panic, she admitted. I tell myself I need more. More people. More noise. Like if I spread myself thin enough, nothing can hurt me too deeply. His chest tightened. And does it work? Her eyes shimmered. No. The honesty cracked through her like glass. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded paper, the same one from that first night. Slowly, deliberately, she unfolded it and pressed it against his chest. The circle was faint now, creased and worn, but still whole. I keep coming back to this, she whispered. I don't know why. Noah looked down at the paper, then back at her face. Because it's not about being full, he said quietly. It's about being complete. Her breath caught. He took the paper gently, then placed it on the table beside them. Without breaking eye contact, he reached out and brushed his thumb lightly over her wrist. The touch was feather soft, almost hesitant, but it sent a shiver through her. You don't need 5 others, he said. You never did. Tears gathered in her eyes, unspilled. Then why do I feel like I'll fall apart if I stop? Because letting one person see all of you means there's nowhere left to hide. The truth of it settled heavy in her chest. She stepped closer. Their bodies were inches apart now. Too close for friendship. Too close for denial. Her forehead hovered near his shoulder, not touching, as if she were testing whether the moment would hold her weight. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. Of losing myself. He shook his head gently. I think you're scared of finding yourself. Her hands lifted, trembling slightly, then rested against his chest. She felt his heartbeat beneath her palms, strong, steady, real. Not scattered. Not divided. The circle tightened again. He inhaled sharply, the restraint in him thinning. Years of unspoken feeling pressed against the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. Elena, he began, then stopped. His voice faltered, not from uncertainty, but from too much truth. She looked up at him. What? He closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them, gaze raw and open in a way she had never seen before. If I say this, he said quietly, everything changes. Her throat tightened. I think it already has. Silence crashed back in, louder than before. His hand came up, hovering near her face, not quite touching. He hesitated, fingers trembling in the space between them. The restraint was almost painful. Almost unbearable. She leaned in just enough that his knuckles brushed her cheek. The contact was electric. A tear slipped down her face, uninvited. He froze, then gently wiped it away with his thumb, the gesture intimate and devastatingly tender. You're not incomplete, he said softly. You're just standing at the edge of something you've never let yourself have. Her lips parted. And what if I'm wrong? Then I'll be wrong with you. The words shattered something open inside her. She exhaled shakily, forehead finally resting against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast. The embrace wasn't desperate, it was grounding. Anchoring. For the first time, the circle didn't feel like a question. It felt like an answer forming. But just as her fingers tightened in his shirt, just as his lips lowered toward her hair, just as the confession pressed dangerously close to being spoken, she pulled back. Her eyes searched his, torn between fear and truth. I need to say this, she whispered. But if I do, I can't go back. He nodded, heart pounding. Neither can I. The space between them filled with everything unsaid. The circle was almost closed.